regenerative culture in, I could use few words, but I'll use a couple. It's when you think of any aspect of culture, of human existence, any aspect of human existence, but experience it and think of it through the regenerative perspective. So, from education, economics, agriculture, um, arts, music, all of that, anything, like all of the aspects brought together that make up culture, but then perceived and experienced and expressed through the regenerative lens. That is regenerative culture. Food systems, food sovereignty, seed sovereignty. My work with food sovereignty has mostly been helping people establish forests or forest gardens, regenerative agriculture, basically. And I've been part of a couple of really cool projects. Some of them start off as like one of the projects I'm really proud of. It started off as a memorial garden for a family that had lost one of its children to, I think, to lupus. And so they wanted us to, my partner and I, in this work, to create a garden that would hold the spirit of their daughter. And so it started off like that, but it ended up being a food forest, a really beautiful food forest. And that I can't help but sneak food into places. So even when I'm asked to like make pretty gardens, I'm like, it can be pretty with food in it too. So anyway, so that's the food sovereignty aspect, is just growing food the best way we can for the best quality. And then with seed sovereignty, a lot of it has been writing. I mean, part of the food sovereignty work is seed saving, but a lot of the projects that I've been part of are still quite young, and we're still moving towards seeding before we can start like seed saving and seed banking and all of that. So in the meantime, a lot of my work around that has been mostly um, writing and, being in space where I can talk about it, helping connect organizations and, such. And then we have our own project here in Tanga, Tanzania, where at the center of it is a children's home. And then we're building a thriving ecosystem around that, but we'll get to that. But food sovereignty is a huge part of that. With education, one of the things that I realized, or we realized within my community that I work with, which is mostly my family, my mom, dad, brother, and his wife. And we all sort of arrived at different points and in different ways at a point of deep dissatisfaction with the education systems that we have available to us. And they're not built to develop innovators. And the world that we're in right now, the world that we're moving towards, it needs innovators. It needs us to be educating our children in a way that celebrates and resources their creativity, their curiosity, their ability to ask questions and travel with those questions and follow their curiosity. And so one half of that question that we're holding right now is, what are some of the ways that African history, African culture, African cultures have held answers to the questions, to modern day questions, but because of the colonial disruption, we don't have access to the knowledge and the sciences and the technologies and the wisdom of our ancestors. That's one half of the question. The second half of the question is, how can education be more nature based? How can it be completely in tune with our natural environment? And also be a pathway to the realization that we are not human, and then that outside thing, place is nature, that we are an expression of the same thing that we call nature. We're not something other than that. So if that then leads to what we started with, compassion. How do we facilitate the growth of that perspective, of that being the center from which our children perceive the world around them, perceive each other, perceive themselves in relation to the ecosystems within which they exist? So those are the questions we're holding right now around education. So an African-centered, nature-based curriculum. And we're in the early stages of developing that, mostly research right now. But my child is going to be, I don't want to say patient zero, but like he's going to be. The whole plan is that he is the first one that, in the community that goes through that. So, you know what they say about firstborns? Parents are experimenting with firstborns. So, yeah. Also, you mentioned the interconnectedness of them. I mean, even just in explaining all of what I do, you can see the interconnected nature of them. Where the better the quality of our food, the better the quality of our relationship with our environment, our soil, the plants, the ecosystem, the better the biodiversity holding us up. The better the quality of our food and our seeds, the better the quality of nutrition that's available to mothers. For women and girls, and female identifying persons through menstruation and birth. So it's all tied together. And then, of course, all of that is held within education. How we educate then advises all of everything else. So it's inevitable. And like I've said before, we have to be willing to see and live from this interconnectedness, because it's a separation that has landed us in this mess that we're in right now. So it absolutely has to be interconnected. I think I referred to it in our email as being interconnected sightedness, being interconnected sighted, having interconnection sightedness. And it's absolutely necessary right now. So I will do my best to keep this short. But seed sovereignty is, so it begins at the premise of the seed in itself is sovereign. So seed sovereignty is described in the mainstream spaces, where it is mainstream, as the ability of the farmer to determine their interaction with the seed and how it is planted, how it is grown, how it is traded, how it is then put back into the soil to then further produce that, good quality plants. I see where we're coming with that, but I disagree with that definition. I think it is extremely anthropocentric, because it still centers the human being. And we can't be talking about seed sovereignty with the human being at the center. Both the words put together, seed and sovereignty, refers to the sovereignty of the seed. The seed in itself, before human beings came into the scene, seeds were going into the soil, creating plants, developing into plants that then would fruit, and then the seed had devised, the entire plant, and therefore the fruit, and therefore the seed, devices a way to be spread. If it's held in a fruit that is edible, then an animal will eat it and take it to transport it to the next place. If it's one that needs to go through the digestive system, a bird will eat it. It has to poop it, so then it becomes available to grow in the soil. It's coconut, for instance. Coconut has water inside, making it so it can float away and land on its next island. And then we have more coconuts coming up. So each of them have their own intelligent system that allows them to be spread and make it to the next place where they can propagate. That to me is seed sovereignty. Where we come in as human beings is in honoring that. And in honoring that, what we do is we ensure that all our activities that are in interaction with seeds make it so the seed's natural way of being is honored. We have veered far from that. And what we have done now is we're doing a lot of genetic manipulation. A lot of this genetic manipulation is based on the argument that we need to be more food secure. If you look at how we've ended up at food insecurity, it's because our agricultural methods do not support the thriving of our soil. So we're doing monoculture. You have the same plant on hectares and hectares of land. Forests do not behave like that. You walk into a forest and you do not have one plant on thousands of acres. You walk into a forest and in one spot, there's a whole bunch of different plants growing. And they figured out harmony. They figured out how to be in that space together because the tall tree provides shade for the next canopy. The one at the bottom provides ground cover. The one in the middle provides an aroma that keeps away certain bugs, and therefore protects the tall tree and the little one, and it's an ecosystem, it's biodiversity, which ensures the soil is constantly growing richer and richer. That's not how we're doing agriculture right now. And because we've changed that, the quality of our seeds has gone down, and therefore the quality of our food, the plants has gone down, crops has gone down, and therefore our food. But instead of going back to the basic truth of we need biodiversity for our food to be rich, what we're trying to do is synthetically provide the nutrients that are needed in our crops into the soil. And what we're doing is creating junkies of our food, of the plants, and then so on and so forth. So you can see the cycle that we've created. And so the whole seed sovereignty movement states that the seed in itself is sovereign. Therefore, the farmer that interacts with that seed needs to have the capacity to interact with the seed in a way that honors it, like another animal would, like any other animal would, But now what we have is a lot of the huge agri-corps, the multinational agri-corps coming in, and agricultural corporations coming in and taking away indigenous seeds. And that's, of course, the other part of this, that it's the indigenous seed that's a lot of indigenous seed varieties have gone extinct in the last decade or two. And so that's another part of the seed sovereignty movement, is a fight for our indigenous seeds and for our indigenous seeds to be grown in their indigenous spaces, their native spaces, by the people whose culture has held the songs and the prayers and the arts and the stories surrounding these seeds. So that is by no means a short answer, but I think
it's a great answer.
But it's a great answer, so we'll go with that.